it's in a way, it's even there's a greater challenge to it, because it's like, you've got just like, if you're doing it, let's say legs would be heavy set, a light set, and then a widowmaker. That's all you got. You don't have any other opportunities. All or nothing, baby. You got to make it happen in those 3 sets.
Hey, what's up, guys? You are watching Muscle Minds, the most science-y podcast we have here on the network. Today, Scott Stevenson and I are going to discuss tactics to bring up a lagging body part, scheduling a deload. Is it good for you to absolutely destroy legs during your leg training? Bringing up your leg development, especially as you get older. And we have an IFBB Pro listener who's attempting to bring up their legs while dealing with knee pain. Guys, all of that and a bunch more, I've got timestamps below if you want to skip around. And listen, guys, if you're new here and you want to make the best progress you can in bodybuilding, then you need to learn. I encourage you to hit the subscribe button. We've got a ton of free education here. Guys like Scott Stevenson, dude, he put like 100 pounds on Jordan Peters. He coached Dave Henry through most of his career. He co-wrote John Meadows' book, and he's here today to freely educate you, so take advantage of it. All right, guys, let's get to the program. I told you Andrea Watson came out for a few days, and we got some good training in. And so one of the things we kind of problem solved with her is, you know, she had done powerlifting, then she got into figure, and now we moved to bikini. And there's really like no reason for her to grow her back any bigger than she has. Okay. And if anything, it's like she has a lot of back going on. So she at times almost has to like pinch it together more to like hide it a little bit. Plus the hair hides it, you know.
Interesting. Yeah.
But one thing that we
were traps and stuff.
Basically. Yeah. And just like back density, you know, like they don't want a girl with like, you know, a thick back for bikini. But what we kind of figured out was we were like, hey, let's try this. So we're we're still going to train back, but we're going to pull it way down. And we're going to try to like not take it to failure. And basically, because she does need to bring up her glutes. Like that's the only thing. If we can get, you know, bikini girl can always use more glutes, and she's made a huge She's made huge progress in the last year. But one of our thoughts is that, you know, why spend some of her recovery on back? We might be able to shoot another body part ahead by reducing an area, by not basically wasting her recoverability on an area that doesn't need to grow. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah, you got like sort of a universal pool of recovery ability.
Yeah.
You know, and you can distribute that as you will, but why waste it on something you're not actually even wanting to necessarily recover? You want it, you know.
Yeah.
You don't care about it so much. It's going to stay. She's not going to lose much, even if she stopped training her back, probably.
Yeah, and we're taking it like way down. It's not going to be a lot, and I'm sure you're right. She probably won't lose anything with it. But that was a direct result of Muscle Minds, like that whole concept that we're going with there.
Oh, right on.
Yeah. Process of like talking to you over the years. That's what made sense, you know. Yeah,
I've got that's in my shameless plug. Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach book is one of the bringing up a weak muscle group is one of the example goals. So I picked the idea of, you know, at the beginning of the book, goals are so important. Like, know what you're trying to do. You know, we do this because it feels good in some way, shape, or form, either the delayed gratification, or we like the workout, or we like how we look, or we like the community, or some combination thereof, and various other things probably too.
Yeah.
But also having that goal as something specific that you're shooting for is going to obviously going to help you get to some place from where you currently are, from point A to point B to Z eventually. So you got to have something sort of specific. So one of those is, of course, bringing up a weak muscle group. And I introduced that idea. I think I have some examples too of how someone could shift. You know, you just take whatever almost everyone's got a stronger muscle group. They've got something that grows. You know, some people say nothing is, but relative to the other, there's something that can be probably cut in half volume wise and maintained.
Yeah.
And as long as you maintain your performance in the gym, There's really logically, you think about this. There's some volumization that happens with glycogen storage and those sorts of things that comes from higher volume training. But if you start off and you can do 200 pounds for 10 reps at the beginning of the year, and you're doing 12 sets per week, and then you drop it down and you're doing 6 sets per week, and you can still do 12 reps with 200 pounds, then you haven't lost any muscle mass, pretty much.
Sure.
Sure. It's assuming the exercise isn't something, it's something you just learned or what have you. It's a stable performance type of exercise you've been doing for years. You're going to keep that muscle so that you can take all that recovery ability and shift it wherever you need it.
Yeah. Yeah. Where I see people, it's when we have a real strong body part. I feel like we really need to bring something else up, but man, does it ever feel good to train whatever body part that is, my shoulders, whatever, my legs, you have that strong body part, and it's like you still want to be able to push that to the max each week, because it's like you kind of tie your identity as a bodybuilder to that lift that you do so well, when maybe if you were to back off that, like, hey, your shoulders aren't going to go anywhere. Yeah, that's been kind of an evolution of thought over time, to think that we have this overall, as you're saying here, just kind of reiterate, overall pool of recoverability. And if your shoulders are already good, why take a piece of that? I love that idea. It makes sense. So we'll see if it works for Andrea, because she's already right up there. Already top 5 competitor at the national level. She's missed her pro card by 1 point, or 1 place, not 1 point, 1 place. So it's like. Yeah. But when we get back into it this next season, we want to make sure it's like, I want her to be bulletproof,
Has that been a comment the judges have sent her direction, that she needs more back muscle?
No, nothing about the back, but about the glutes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny with bikini, because like your hair works as a curtain, basically. All you really see are the delts. You see like the rear and side delts, because they kind of like get that pinch back thing, and you see the delts, and then the rest of it is hair, and then booty. And that's right, and that's it.
What's the current standard way of back present? Is it should you leave the hair down?
Yes.
Or should you? Okay, so flipping the hair so that you can see the back is not.
No, that's not a bikini thing. But I mean, that's more like physique, figure. They don't even care about seeing your back in bikini. But
right. It's part of the feminine presentation. Is if you have long hair.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm trying to think. Like, now that I think about it, I think short-haired women are strongly underrepresented in the bikini division.
Yeah, none of them, as far as I know. I can't think, like, because I know I see a lot of girls that if they don't have long hair, they wear extensions for the division.
What if they put them in just for the show, because they know that's part of
they do. Or wigs, all of that. It's like there's a lot of that we, as bodybuilders, we don't think about that side as much. You know what I mean? Right. Like, we think, Saturday morning, get ready for the show. We got to have your tan on. Of course, you got to have your water and your carbs situated. Right. But, girls are like getting up at 3:45 a.m. to start working on their makeup and hair. It's like, it's a whole other world,
Dude, I'm so psyched. I'm getting my suit on Saturday and a new hairpiece on Monday. It's all going to be together. All coming together. It's awesome. Like, what? I'm having a fake mustache stenciled in.
Mustache extension.
Yeah, because I'm doing a cop routine, for the night show, and I got to have a super fuzz, mustache.
All right, we should probably intro this thing. Guys, you're watching Muscle Minds with Scott Stevenson. Check out our great sponsors, TrueNutrition.com. You can use our code THINK. Check out MPA Muscle Intrusion. And I have to say that MPA Muscle Intrusion is one of my favorite intra-workout products. It tastes fantastic, good quality, highly branched cyclic dextrin. Use our code THINK for some additional savings. And if you're in Canada, check out supplementsource.ca. You can get blowout deals on top name supplements. You get a pre-workout for like $15. So go check it out. And you can get some ephedra there, some ephedrine. So check out some ephedrine. And we are also, of course, brought to you by, you can't see it in my shot here, but I've got the Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach book in the background. You can get the hardcover, or you can get the, Scott, I bet Scott's got it right there.
I have one. Yeah, I'm like, where's mine at? Oh, there it is, a little dusty.
You get the hardcover over at Amazon, Be Your Own Bodybuilding Coach, or byobbcoach.com. You can save yourself some money by getting the ebook if you want to go that route. I like the hardcover personally. Scott, we had a lot of great feedback on the last episode. People enjoyed that instead of taking like one topic and diving ultra deep like L-carnitine or something like that, that we tackled like a whole bunch of stuff. And so I thought a fun way to follow that up might be to do it again. And I know I've got a few questions from our Patreon. By the way, thank you to all of our Patreon people. You guys are freaking awesome. Appreciate your support. Yep. And we also had, I think, a couple questions from the Facebook group. I'll just grab, let's see, whatever we had here to start. I'm not just kind of like a random pick here. How about this one here? This is from Jason. He says, is it important to schedule deload periods into your program, or is it acceptable to go by feel and intuition? Every time I try to schedule a deload, I feel like I'm missing something and it drives me nuts. Thank you for the great information, guys. I can relate to this question a lot.
Yeah. I'm going to answer this total like bro in the bro style. Like, did Ronnie have deloads? Seriously, I mean, the idea of a deload is it's a formalization of what bodybuilders have been doing for years by intuitively planning that out. I mean, you've got a sort of a spectrum of approaches here. You've got like old school. It's like, I just competed. I'm a wreck. I need to take a break. So I take a break. I'm just applying common sense.
Yeah.
Or, let's look at like Eastern Bloc athletes and how they're like structuring everything. Like, go back to like Matveyev and the origins of periodization, where you've got to have everything like really, really well structured. So there's workable and solutions everywhere in between.
Yeah.
In these cases. So, intuition and feel totally will get the job done. But the question is, are you getting where you want to go physique-wise in doing that? Or are you allowing your obsessive-compulsive tendencies to drive you to do more than what behooves you in terms of recovery? And so I'll toss out a couple thoughts. One is like, are you getting where you want to? Do you have the sense, if you're really honest with yourself, that, hey, I'm doing too much, like I need to take a break, or, and you can kind of answer that question. I've got so many examples of this, but there's a couple main ones. If you've ever been forced to take a break and noticed that in doing so, all of a sudden, when you come back, you haven't lost anything and maybe even got stronger. This can happen when you get sick. Happened when I was a kid in high school. I was swimming and getting ready for football. And my junior year out playing football, I had the tendency, like when I couldn't go around, I'd try to dive over people sometimes. Tried to dive over someone. I got hit in the leg, got a thigh bruise, and then I got sick at the same time. And this was like 2 weeks into the season. I was on my ass for a week doing nothing, and I felt awful, hardly eating. We had started an off-season lifting program that was like just some standardized stuff. And it was like kind of like you're the 155 level or the 175 level or the 195 level or whatever, and you just do 2 sets. Follow this kind of mini pyramid on like incline press, and then there was like just basic maintenance, twice a week. I came back and did that, and my strength leapt forward. It's just his upper body. I couldn't do legs. My strength, because I was doing so much. I didn't know. I'm a kid. I'm just like, I'm just going and going and going.
Sure.
I went from getting like 8, like I don't know what the numbers were. Let's say it was 150. I went from getting like 8 reps with 155 to getting 25 reps.
Wow. Yeah.
It was like I misloaded the bar. Like, what's going on here? Are these fake plates? Like, are these made of foam?
What a lesson to have learned there.
Oh, It was just crazy. Yeah. And it wasn't like I was eating and recover. It wasn't like I wasn't doing like hot, warm, ice baths and warm saunas and massage and, eating up because I'd been in a deficit or anything like that. I felt like shit. I was literally about as sick as I can remember being in my life, and in pain because of this thigh bruise thing. And so recovery during that week was suboptimal for sure, but it was recovery nonetheless.
Yeah.
Because I wasn't doing all this training. So I'd been, we went into this thing. I was I think I may have talked about this training program. It's 100 sets 3 times a week, or 98 sets 3 times a week.
Good
and
God.
I was on the swim team. I was swimming and doing like 2.5 hours of cardio. The lifting took 4 hours 3 times a week to get through all those sets.
I bet, yeah.
And I went through all this. So we did 2-a-days, and then we had 1 week of the season, and then we had a game after 2 days, and then we had 1 week of normal practice, and then I hurt my leg, and then I had that week off of doing nothing.
Yeah,
and it was crazy. Happened with fortitude training. I had this is my favorite intensive cruise story. One of my early clients was a mathematician. Actually, he was taught maths in school. He's a Brit, and he taught actually high level gifted kids, like calculus, this kind of stuff. So he's not, he's no slouch in mathematics himself, because he's teaching like genius level kids who are high performers in math. And he went through, we pushed really hard. He made great gains during his first blast, and he actually went longer than normally you would, just because he was in a good place for that. And finally, he took a break, and did basically his first deload of his entire life, the way I've set it up in fortitude training. So it's an intensive cruise. You drop your volume down, you drop your frequency down, and then you finish out the period with doing nothing for about one third of the total time you've taken of the deload. So it's a taper, basically. I've taken this from the sports physiology, sport performance literature. He came back in, and he picked loads that he figured he was going to get 10 or 12 reps with on his loading sets, and he got like 23, 24 reps.
Wow.
And he's like, okay, fuck, I dropped. He messaged me after the second workout that he's like, Scott, I thought, I was like, what? I was embarrassed. He was embarrassed. He didn't message me after the first one because he's like, what's wrong with me? I don't know how to log my weights.
Yeah.
I can't count. I can't add. Like, what's going on? I'm a mathematics teacher. This was so funny. He's like, I teach math. I can't even do this. But this was not a clerical error. This was not a secretarial problem. This was the fact that he had his very first deload. That was a real deload, and he pushed really hard, and the system worked well for him. So you can do deloads. Like the DC style deload was totally intuitive, at least the way Dante had me doing those for people who are doing DC training. I'm not going to speak for Dante. Yeah. So some people would be like, take 2 weeks and do nothing. And some people, he'd have them do sets where they'd stop short of failure. So how you structure that is totally up to you. So as far as the question goes, you can totally intuit how to do that as long as you have good intuition. And the way to know is literally, it's just like, okay, I've been training for 8 years. What if I just took like 8 days and just didn't train for like the first time in 8 years?
Yeah.
Am I going to lose all my gains? Am I going to go anywhere? But I will know. And this is the one thing that Dante used to say, and this is what I want to have people do with fortitude training, is you want to be chomping at the bit. Like literally, it should be like, I want to fucking train today, but you don't. And the next day, I really want to train today, but you don't. You maybe go one more day, another day. Powerlifters employ the same thing. They will go, a lot of them, and they intentionally know. And you can imagine the scenario, like you've been training your ass off, and you've lifted some pretty massive shit, and the anticipation of the meets coming up, and then you bring your training down. And then, of course, if someone's enhanced, they start loading in Halo and all this other shit to make the aggression even higher. And now they just want to go in there and fucking destroy gravity. They want to go make gravity their bitch, and they can't. So the day of the meet comes around, and they're just a rip-roaring mess of rage if this is what they're seeking and they're lifting, and they just go fucking bonkers, and that's how they can actually perform better than they ever had in their training. So that same sort of, not that you need to turn yourself into a lunatic, but that same sort of like, I really want to get in there. If you can hold off on that for you can even do like a 4 or 5 day experiment and just hold off, see what happens when you come back.
Yeah, that 1 day thing, like I find that a lot of times people are like, oh man, I haven't been feeling good. Everything's been feeling beat up. I'll get this for my clients. And they're like, I really need to, deload. And then, they started deload, and I talked to them. I message them 2 days later, and I say, hey, how's the deload going? And they say, oh, I took 1 day off and I started feeling a lot better, so I went back in. And I feel like if you had been pushing for an extended period of time and you needed to take a break, don't just take that 1 day then. I would say that. I would say if you're going to commit to it, give it a little bit more time, because I agree, man, because I feel like, at least in my experience, when I've done that, then I end up needing to deload again pretty soon. Like if I just take that 1 day off and then I hit it hard 3 days and then I'm back to the exact same place I was, where if I really were to back off, then I give myself that nice hard reset, basically. On the other end of the spectrum, I think that some of the older guys who have been around a little while, because I've talked to a lot of people about, like, right now, the big term being reps in reserve. Everybody's talking about reps in reserve. All the programs have reps in reserve. I've met some younger guys that have never gone to failure in their lives because they think they're not supposed to. They're just like, oh, you're always supposed to leave 3 in the tank, 2 in the tank. It's not good. There is some confusion around that. But I'll tell you what, some of the older guys, I feel like they're not a fan of reps in reserve. I think part of it is because they've already intuitively figured things out. And I think that reps in reserve can be a great way to help a newer guy who doesn't have a concept of backing off, of deloading, like a good way to give it a program. You know what I mean, Scott? Like some programs will be like, on your 6th week, you're going to do 3 reps in reserve. And that's like written in stone, no matter what, on that 6th week. And I think that for me, it would be harder to get with a program like that nowadays. For me, I feel like I need to be more intuitive with it, because I might feel great on that 6th week, but I might have felt like crap on the 4th week. You know what I mean?
Right. So many thoughts there, man. So, one, like if we think about Ronnie would take like a couple months off after the Olympia.
Yeah.
The 1 year that he did the Arnold and won, he came back, he said that Olympia prep was the hardest because he didn't have that time off and he had the course peak again.
Yeah.
John Meadows, another example, used to take, at least a month off when he felt like he needed it. Yeah, many, many times. He almost always did that. And he would actually lose weight after a show because he never had a big appetite.
Yeah.
One thing Dante actually would say, and this is where auto-regulation becomes so important. You can't apply that, just take a day off. Especially works well with like the DC2 way. Because you're training Monday, Wednesday, Friday, and you come in on a Wednesday or a Friday, like, I'm going to just take this day off.
Okay.
Then that gives you go from Wednesday until Monday. That's a relatively a pretty long break.
Yeah, that'd be a nice solid break.
It is a solid break. So that's almost like a pseudo cruise.
Sure.
And that could extend a blast. Like someone maybe hits that at 5 weeks. They may get to 8 or 10 weeks doing that.
Okay, I could go with that. Yeah.
And that type of now if you're doing a more of a pro split or bro split, then that 1 day you might be just like kind of fooling yourself.
Yeah.
The thing that I did with Fortitude, I'm really happy with how this is the end all be all solution, but I'm really happy with the way this worked out. Is I looked at what little tapering literature there is. This is what's done in many sports, like strength and power sports. So power lifters, they will have some time off. That's what like a true taper is. So like what I talked about, where they, don't do anything for a few days, but they get to the end of a training cycle and they're literally trying to get, various ways you can do this, but they're trying to do something that's assuring them that they're going to know what they're going to be lifting on the platform, because they're doing something akin to that in training. So they're getting down to really, really low reps, like singles. Sprinters would do that too. Swimmers do the same thing. I was a swimmer. So like, let's say you swim 100-meter butterfly or something like that. You might have gone from, 5,000 yards a day or 4,000 yards or 3,000 yards a day. You might drop your volume in half, but you keep the quality the same. So you, instead of like trying to do like 1,000 meters butterfly or something like that, you might do 5 100-meter butterfly swims. So very, very similar. So you're keeping the quality and the effort high, and that's what I've done with Fortitude training during the intensive cruise. is you just do the muscle round days. You drop down a volume tier. If you're at 1, you can't go any lower really. So, but that's not a problem. And then you extend out. You just train 3 times instead of 4 times a week. It's a rough guideline, but doing this keeps the quality of the effort high. So you get to go in there and say, okay, if you still really, if your mindset, and this is a good one to have, if I'm going to train my ass off, whatever I do, I'm going to do it right. Then there's no masturbation and then stopping before you finish, like, that was a really good set. I wanted to finish that one, take it to failure, God damn it, but I'm supposed to stop at 3 reps reserve. Yeah. Well, there seems to be a performance enhancement effect. This is just talking about performance from the literature. When you taper in this fashion, reducing volume but keeping effort, quality of the training intact. So even someone who's trying to do like a 100-meter butterfly, they may actually do 50-meter swims at the race pace or even faster because they can do that. They can't maintain it for 100, but they can do it for 50. So that's a neurological thing. That's a race pace thing. That's getting used to swimming at that speed. So that's what I kind of did with fortitude training. And what happens, the leap that I took there is that, and this is what happened with the client I mentioned, who was the mathematics teacher, who made those giant performance gains. That has something to do with, of course, with the nervous system recovering. But hopefully then, as long as you don't just go way too hard when you start your next blast and you bury yourself, you've now got performance gains that can be translated into a better stimulus and then better muscle mass growth. If that's what you're shooting for. Of course, this is bodybuilding, so that's the goal. So that taper approach has worked really well for people, and you kind of know that, at least the way, and this applies to any program, I think, is if you've got, if you're auto-regulating and you go and you blast, I'm just using the blast and cruise terms that Dante basically introduced to the bodybuilding world. So a mesocycle with a deload, or a blast and a cruise, whatever terms you want to use, or training cycle with a deload. If you go and you're auto-regulating and your deload doesn't mean that you come back afterwards at least as strong or hopefully stronger, and stronger is what happens very, very regularly with fortitude training if people are doing it right and they're not dieting down for a show. So they're in an off season. And diet will matter, of course, what you do there. But if your combination of figuring out when the deload and then how you do your deload means you don't come back better, chances are you could very well be doing something wrong. Yeah. Either you're waiting too long, you're not deloading enough, you're not deloading long enough, you're not bringing the volume down enough. A lot of people were coming back with DC training. Not everyone, but many people were coming back and finding, God, I just came back weaker, and it took me like the next 6 weeks of my 8-week blast to go back where I was. I only had 2 weeks of true progress. I keep on taking 2 steps back on my deload. Yeah. Huh. And that's why I wanted to find a solution for. And I think some of it could just be purely up in the head, because if just the way you're wired is just to go all out and attack the weights, and it's like, imagine a boxer, imagine Mike Tyson. Okay, Mike, we're a week before the boxing match, so the thing of the taper, sort of a week before the bout, the fight, and I just want you to go in there and just tap a little bit. Don't try to knock anyone out. Just put on the pink gloves here, and we're gonna just play fight a little bit. That's not the right mentality to have if you want to come back after your deload and be ready to rock and roll.
Yeah. So how would that look then? Because like you said, you made the analogy of the swimmer who would do 50 meters instead of 100. How would that look for, say, a guy who was doing a top set and a back off set on his bench press?
They would just, so if that's like what they're doing for, let's say, 3 exercises, or depends on how much volume, they would cut that in half.
Okay.
And just do the lighter backups, back off set, but still take that to failure.
Yeah, I gotcha.
And said, let's say they're training chest twice a week, Monday and Thursday, and they typically blast for 5 weeks. It kind of depends on how long. The way I set things up in fortitude training is the longer you've blasted, the longer you cruise. It's about a 3-to-1 ratio, and that works out for most people. So if someone's gone for 6 weeks and they train Monday, Thursday for chest, let's say, just thinking about chest, they might then, it's okay, now it's time to take a cruise. I need a deload here. So they would go in on Monday and just do half the volume, but train just as hard. Thursday the same, and then come back in on Monday and do the same, and then play it by ear. They might take that Thursday, Friday, Saturday. They're doing like a 3-way split or something like that. They're probably on a 3-1, 1 off or something. So they would train through that for the first week or so, and then to have a few days off to let that aggression build and be sure they're fully recovered. The nice thing about this too is it lets you do other stuff with your life. So
we don't want to do other stuff with our life. We want to go to the gym. We want to,
neglect our spouse.
Exactly. We want to keep doing what we were doing.
You're right. So it can rejuvenate in that way too, to have a few days, like I want to have a vacation, plan it around my vacation, where
for sure,
getting the gym just won't be possible. We're going to be on the ski slopes or some shit,
Yeah.
So, but that's how it look. You cut the volume in half, or in that case, if it's 2, then you go to 1. That's just the only way to kind of cut it up.
Yeah.
You've got 2 sets. You can't really divide 2 in any other way. But still train just as hard on those. So, or you could stick with the heavier one, whichever you like. But the volume would be less. The effort and the quality is just as high. And what I typically have people do, this is why muscle rounds are nice for this. The person might test out new exercises.
Okay.
So let's say they're doing like a deficit deadlift or a rack dead or a dead with chains or dead with bands. And they're like, I've been through this one. I'm not making progress here. I'm starting to plateau out, or at least I can see it coming. It's like, I'm going to do my deload now. I'm going to, instead of doing 2 working sets of the deadlift variety, I'm going to try deadlifts on the hammer strength machine, or deadlifts in the Smith machine, or something that they haven't done, or something that they know they like that hasn't been in the rotation for a while. So they add that in, and then they set that up. So that makes it new and novel and fun. The stimulus is also, the nice thing about that is when you go to a new exercise, you've been doing regular deadlifts, and now you go to deficits, or now you go to racks or something like that. Just the change in the movement is novelty, and you'll get sore from that in a way you wouldn't had you stuck with the previous exercise you've been doing.
Yeah.
So just going there, you're getting a good stimulus if this will satisfy you psychologically, because you're doing something brand new, and you have only that one shot to make that set perfect. So instead of 2 sets in this scenario. So that's how that would generally be put together. But it works really well. And especially if someone is having a hard time making gains, and they're really pushing the food. This allows them to be training less. For some people, depends on how training affects their appetite. For some people, this means they can get more food in, and they have an easier time having a caloric excess, so they can make gains, and they kind of catch up on their recovery at the same time. So the less training days means less caloric expenditure, easier way of making sure they have a caloric excess in their diet.
Okay. I've got a bunch more stuff here.
Yes, keep going.
I know you posted a thread over at the group too, the Facebook group. So I'm looking. We have some questions over there as well. I'll throw this one up next. This is from Jim McDonald. He says, if you do unilateral movements like dumbbell shoulder presses and have a strength imbalance, but not a size imbalance, should you train both sides the same weight, sets, reps, or should you train each side the same intensity, like to failure or 2 reps in reserve, for example? He says he can press 50 pounds 10 times with his right side, but only 7 times with the left side, yet he appears symmetrical. How many reps should he do?
8.5.
8.5. Split the difference.
Well, you can't do 8.5 with the other one. That was a joke, Jim. Depends on your goals. Depends on if it's bodybuilding, then you're good to go. Yeah. Chances are there's something asymmetrical somewhere because it's manifesting in the performance. So maybe not in your delt, maybe it's in your trap, maybe you've got an impingement in your neck that that, only is apparent when you've loaded the neck and the spine with you're holding the dumbbells, and that's disallowing the motor drive to move the dumbbells.
Yeah.
There's probably something somewhere. So that's have to ask, have to talk with him and do a history and figure out, if he's had a car accident or previous rotator cuff injury or something like that. But as far as bodybuilding goes, you're on a good track, except that that's telling you that there's something there that's imbalanced in some way, shape, or form. So I'm guessing he said he can do 7 with one and 10 with the other. That's just like when he does a unilateral dumbbell press. I imagine if he does bilateral dumbbell presses, he also notices the difference there, like the one arm's giving out. So you're not really going to have much of an option in that case if you're doing them that way. I would simply I want to figure out why that is. So he may know already because he's had an injury or something like that. Just because you're stress testing the system every time you go in and lift. Yeah. So the analogy is an actual what they call a stress test. If someone has potentially cardiovascular disease and they want to bring out potential chances for an arrhythmia in the heart, they do an EKG stress test where they put them on a treadmill usually, or it could be a bike, and they bring them up, do a graded exercise test, and they bring them up and stress the heart out and look for things like ST segment depression or some other arrhythmia or dysrhythmia or angina. So there's no problem at rest. You're good to go during the day, but when you get stressed, and which could happen if you get stressed or you're in an emergency situation, then that's when people sometimes have heart attacks. Like risk of heart attack goes up substantially on Monday mornings in the Western world because we're all stressed because we have to go to work on average. So when you get in the gym and you're pushing and you got one side that's a substantial strength difference. Mm-hmm. There's something there that's not working. It'd be kind of like have a car that steers to the left. Yeah. Like the tires look great, they look aligned, but they don't behave like they're aligned.
Yeah, there's
an alignment
there.
problem. Yeah, there's something going on in there that's worth digging into and figuring out. I would also look. Mirrors are actually, aside from the vanity aspect, mirrors have utility for self-diagnosis, so to speak, self-evaluation. Look in the mirror and see how he's doing those presses. So he may be just used to. Most people are one side dominant. Every once in a while, someone's ambidextrous or amphibious, as I like to say, meaning I can write with both hands underwater. That's my joke. Sorry.
Really.
It's a bad joke, I know, but I always have to say it. There's probably something going on with the trap and the shoulder girdle that's allowing him to move that. There's probably some asymmetry in motion. You can probably see that if you're close enough to a mirror where you can look and see. Another way you could do this with the marvels of modern technology is do those. This would be really cool to do, actually. Do those unilateral dumbbell presses that he explained, and just go to the 7th rep and take the right and left, film them individually as evenly on as you can, and then flip the right image so it matches the left, flip the left image so it matches the right, and play the video simultaneously for both, and see if you see a difference when you're comparing the right and the left when the one's been flipped or the other way around.
Yeah.
And you're probably going to see you don't look exactly the same.
Sure, of course.
You can do this. It's really freaky. If you want to see where bodybuilders are asymmetrical, if you got like a direct on most muscular or a front double bicep or a front lat spread or back shot, whatever, take the image, slice it down the middle, take the left and right halves and flip one of them so you can combine and make a bodybuilder version out of 2 left halves and 2 right halves, and then compare those 2 versions. And you'll see bodybuilders that sometimes they look like they're from different weight classes. There's so much difference. If like one leg's bigger than the other, what have you. So doing that, he could do that, film that, and check it out and see what's going on. If he can't see it himself, because he lives in there, it's his own head, and he's used to watching himself, right. And see what's asymmetrical and figure out where his alignment is off. But if everything's growing the way it should be, and it doesn't look asymmetrical, then from a purely bodybuilding aesthetics perspective, it's good to go. From a biomechanical and injury prevention perspective, I'd want to figure out what's going on there. And either try to remedy that if there's something there that can be fixed, like a rotator cuff weakness because his capsule's been stretched or what have you. So rotator cuff work might be something that could help. A form asymmetry that he's unaware of, which is what the video would help. Get to the root of that issue, get his body aligned, and that way he's got that he's got the injury risk, I would guess, minimized, even though it's not apparent now from what he said. And that way he'll be performing in a safe way, and then, won't matter bodybuilding aesthetics wise, but it could matter down the road if he hurts himself.
That would make sense. Yeah. And I think like none of us are completely symmetrical. Like you said, you can do that split picture thing and see such a difference from the left to the right. And I think that one side is always going to be a little stronger than the other. So I think anybody who's listening to this, if you're finding like, hey, I always get, one more rep on my dumbbell row with the right side than the left, I don't think that like one rep is a big deal. But when you're seeing like, that's like almost 30% difference. That's substantial. So I just wanted to point that out for anybody listening that, you don't necessarily need to do a deep dive if you find that one side is, marginally stronger than the other, because we're going to all have that, right?
Yeah. Everyone's going to be a little bit. And there's, if you're always doing one side before the other, flip that around, reverse that every once in a while so you don't have an order effect going on. Yeah.
Do you go, like if you're to do a dumbbell row, would you go left to right? Because I know a lot of people do that because that's the way we read in the in the Western culture.
I do it the Chinese way. I go top to bottom, actually.
So which arm would you start with?
I would probably be doing a muscle round, or I might do a muscle round. I would actually intuit based on how my lats were feeling.
Okay. So you make sure that you sometimes will rotate that. You don't always go left to right.
Yeah. I don't always pick one or the other.
I find if I were to just go with what felt good, like, you don't think about taking your first step when you start walking. You know what I mean? You just start walking. Right. I would start with my right arm in general. It's just the way my brain wants to go. I don't always do it, but I would want to start with my right arm.
I've been like, for example, the lat. I don't. There's nothing. I've torn my right lat, but it doesn't cause any. I didn't even know I tore it. I just can see it. I never rehabbed it. I never knew there was a big hole in it. So that's not an issue. But with my leg, like with this neuralgia paresthetica going on.
Yeah.
And so the unilateral stuff, I would almost always start with the left. So I keep my focus on keeping that one, making sure I don't re-injure that, don't do the things and movement-wise. Like I'm basically doing the training is on, the focus and my mindset is on that left one. And the right one's kind of coming along for the ride. The right one's healthy. The right quad was always been a little bit bigger anyway.
Yeah.
So it's not an issue. The right leg's bigger, so I can, and I would still go to failure with that one, but that one's always usually second because I'm just sort of like all my orientation is on the left side, but that's because I'm in a rehab scenario. So
we've got a bunch more training stuff, but I'm going to throw this one up here because it is the next one, and it's not training stuff. Ideas for site enhancement for bringing up lagging body parts, chest in my case. And thanks for Elijah. He's one of our new Patreon people. Appreciate you, brother.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for contributing. Scott is really enjoying the Lamborghini. And what
it helps with the payments. I heard Lamborghinis are like $5,000 a month for insurance alone. Just for the insurance, man.
I can't imagine why, right? Yeah.
We're going to get the Think Big logo wrapped on the Lambo next week. So thanks, Elijah. Appreciate you contributing to that.
If you do that, then you need to get like Victoria doing like one of those, a car and driver bikini shots.
Hell yeah. Listen, I could ask her. I'd be like, hey, if I get a Lambo, would you do it? And she'd be like, sure. Yeah, you get a Lambo, I'll do it.
Exactly. Yeah. Oh my gosh, that would be hilarious. If you could Photoshop that shit and post it up and just watch people trip out, it'd be hilarious.
Yeah.
So site enhancement. I am not a site enhancement expert by any means whatsoever. Haven't ever done it. typically try to get people to avoid that until a very last thing. Chest in particular is one from everyone I've spoken with and known and read who's tried it can be very, very painful. Also, the difficulty there is that because chest's a pennated muscle, just the anatomical shape of the chest is such that you have to be very artistic if you're going to try to bring that up, because it's flat and wide. It's not round and bulbous. So, like, take the sweep of your quad, your vastus lateralis. You know, that one you see people get, you know, big lumps and that sort of stuff. But at least, you know, like, you're trying to, like, if you inject somewhere and it makes for a round lump, that's basically. Hold on just a second. I gotta do one thing on my computer here so we don't shut down.
All right. Oh, and I want to say hi. We were getting a bunch of comments, so I didn't address those, including Elijah's with us. He said, not implying synth oil, by the way.
Okay.
And he also added, if I see a Lambo, I'm dropping my Patreon. Dude, if I got a Lambo, I don't care about Patreon anymore. You know what I'm saying? It's like at that point, that'd be a lot of... Yeah,
probably like a $49 remote control Lamborghini on Amazon. You know,
I might be able to do that. I'll save up for that. Yeah.
As an aside, there's a kid and a dad in my neighborhood. They drive by, and he has like this little sports car thing that he got for Christmas like a year ago, and it goes like 5 miles an hour. And they come down my street, and I always tell them, "You better slow down there, buddy."
I bet you do.
I'm like that old guy, you know, who thinks he's funny, as I prove in this podcast.
I bet you do. They're like, who's the guy with the mohawk, that crazy hair?
He's a weird dude.
With the muscles, you're all jacked. You're probably in a tank top, too, at the time. I'm sure it's hot down there in Florida. So
might have been.
Picture that.
It's been chilly lately. It almost hit freezing the other night, yeah. So synthol is how most people would do this, of course. But he's not implying synthol. So, you know... Local injections, like, the thing is, you know, there's such a risk and I've talked with people, someone not even too long ago who just did they're just looking to put an injection there. That would be like the last spot for an injection. The nerve density is pretty high. So it's just like the quad for some people, but not all. You can get a lot of pain there. So that's not good. What that could mean, and a lot of inflammation as well. It seems like. So let's say you inject that and then you go and train it. The concern that I've always had with people who inject it or training a muscle that's been just recently injected, that's inflamed and hurts, is one, you've got a weakened area there because it's inflamed potentially. Everything's already pre-stretched in terms of where that injection site is. So you've got a round it, especially if you put SEO in there. He's not talking about that, but just the inflammation itself. And also, the nervous system is pretty smart. There's a rotation among motor units across the belly of the muscle. So there's feedback that actually comes from the muscle spindles that are associated with the motor neurons for a given localized region in the muscle belly. So if you got a place that's been injured, the nervous system is going to work around that. It's really, really fascinating the way it does it. They've demonstrated this in fish where they paralyze some of the muscle of the fish and then watch their swimming mechanics.
Oh, yeah.
And they still swim the same way. There's like everything still works, even though like they paralyze some of the swimming muscles. Yeah. And we actually did an experiment like this with MRI way back when. Even it happens in humans when you like whack one muscle, severely fatigue it with E-stim, and then ask the person to do knee extensions. The other muscles take up the slack. Of course, they have to. So my presumption is, I haven't seen the study directly with injecting inflammatory substances in the human muscles and watching activation patterns, but you're probably creating an activation pattern. You're creating a local injury and an activation pattern that's going to predispose you for a local injury. And I think chest is probably one of the most difficult ones to get a good shape on. That's why you don't see people doing it, because every guy wants a big chest, right? That's why, Monday is International Bench Press Day. But you don't see people doing SEOs on their chest. A lot of people do chest injections. But that's the one that's, I think, least amenable to bringing up with a with a site injection, and the one that's probably higher on the list as far as injury potential and inflammation and pain and just being a no-go.
Yeah.
So
if I could like just go in a completely different direction with it, man, what about like, I feel like, cause I can tell you, and I'd be curious to know, Elijah's with us. What about his shoulders? How are his shoulders by comparison? Cause here's what I saw in my own life. When I got contest lean the first time, I recognized that like my shoulders were way bigger than my chest. And what happened was that, a lot of my chest training was going to my shoulders, and my chest wasn't getting the same activation as my shoulders were. I was training shoulders on the bench press, and then I was training shoulders on my shoulder exercises, So the shoulders were getting hit a ton, but the chest, not so much. It was through figuring out how can I get better activation out of my chest. Cause he's talking about like, upper chest, all that. But I mean, if you bring up your whole chest, your upper chest is going to, did he say upper chest? Maybe I made that part up.
That's a fair assumption, but I don't remember reading that, but yeah, that's where most people need more chest.
So he says shoulders are dominant for sure.
Yeah.
So
of course.
And that's super common. In fact, you know what, man, we were talking about Andrea at the beginning of this. One of the reasons, so we went back to doing more actual bench press. She had gotten implants this past year. She had done zero chest work. And I did feel that with a little more chest work, we could get like more of a strong, that V shape, from the top to bring the shoulders out and have a little bit more, like get the chest to fill out a little bit more.
Not be caved in here. Yeah.
Exactly. And my thought was, you know what, going from doing nothing to adding in just a couple exercises, that's probably going to make a difference over an off-season period of time. And even if we don't do a ton for the chest, her shoulders are going to get bigger by doing bench press, like, because we're not, but here's the thing, man, is I feel like everybody who starts bodybuilding, not everybody, that's an overstatement, but a lot of people, they end up with stronger shoulders first. So Scott, how would he, let me ask you this then, instead of talking about site enhancement, what can he do with his exercises to get more chest activation instead of shoulders?
Yeah, there's a ton of things there. So that's, like I said before, bringing up the weak muscle group. So I have a whole YouTube video actually on this topic, which I'm not going to try to go through here, but
I'll link it.
So
if you can send it to me later,
I'll send it to you. Yeah. So one thing to connect his original question in this is that people do find, if they do site injections, that it can help them have a better mind-muscle connection. Some people kind of do it for that reason. They don't feel like overly pain. They don't get like, holy shit, I feel like I'm going to tear my chest if I try to train it now. But they get a better pump there. They can feel that better. So one example of that would be people who use insulin. Not suggesting people necessarily do this, but if someone is a pre-workout insulin user, you need to know that muscle contraction will speed the rate of entry of the insulin into your system. So if someone injects into a muscle that they go and they train, they're going to turn that into a faster acting insulin than if they put it in a subcutaneous area of the body that's not being, there's no underlying muscle being trained. They're not training the heat. There's not extra blood flows. That blood flow speeds up the delivery or entry of insulin into the blood really, really rapidly. So you got to just, if you're going to do that, not suggesting it at all, but that's just, I feel like I have to say this as a warning, but people will get a pump from that. People used to do it all the time with IGF-1. That was, people were using that. Yeah. People were using that all the time. They get a great pump. And that, I think, simply having that there, it's interesting. There's something that can be said too for knowing you're getting a good pump. If someone's trained somewhat intuitively, and mind-muscle connection, meaning their exercise form is important, and they're getting good mind-muscle connection, it sort of means that they're not going to be as inclined to try to use too much weight. It's like, wow, this is feeling really good. I'm getting a great pump. And just like the guy who looks phenomenal, he doesn't care that he goes in there and he has to be, pressing 405 on the incline press because he looks awesome. But the guy who doesn't look that good, a lot of times it's just psychological. This is, an egotistical type of endeavor where if you don't look that good, like, at least I'm strong, or at least I train hard. So if you're getting good pump and you like how you're looking and everything's going well in the mirror, then something that helps with that is going to probably help keep you from doing what he may have been doing, which is using too much weight. So to that, you definitely can. The studies are there, and they've actually done this a good bit with chest, where you tell people to use chest more so than their triceps or their deltoids, and they can shift the EMG such that happens. And that happens at low weights up till about, the studies that I'm aware of, about 80% of a 1 rep max. Once you start going too heavy, you're not going to be able to have a relative more activation in the target muscle and less in the muscle that you don't want to be using. So his delts or his anterior delt. And that makes sense. If 200 pounds is your 1 rep max and you're trying to use 160 and you're almost at you're at 80% of your 1 rep max, you're going to have to use a lot of the muscle. If you're going to try to not use that anterior delt, which is already overly contributing to your strength, then your 1 rep max with a good mind-muscle connection is not 200. It's maybe 160. So you may have to use 110, something like that, in order to maintain that relative activation pattern that makes the chest the weak link versus the delt. So ways that you can do that. Many people find retracting the scapulae helps, and just keeping them locked in.
Yeah.
Finding exercises that have a good loading curve. So fly, especially fly movement. So you take the triceps out. So find a good machine, a fly machine. There's some ones that literally have less tension at the end and more in the middle where you're stronger. Using a full range of motion safely, of course, can be super helpful for people, especially those who are sitting a lot during the day and they normally have kind of a shortened muscle. Just sitting with the muscle in a shortened position, like a lot of us do when we work on our desks all day, that does not help with muscle size. Whereas a muscle that's resting and in the lengthened position is going to be bigger. I've talked about this in the context of people with spinal cord injuries. You look at people who've had complete spinal cord injuries and disalign the people who don't take their anti-spasticity medication because that changes the activation. But muscle that's just sitting there, that's paralyzed, that's lengthened, doesn't lose much size. And so what they tend to do is plantar flex. So they'll point their toes when they're sitting in their chair. It's just kind of the average person. And that means that all the plantar flexors are shortened. The calf muscles, gastrocsoleus, plantaris, those are all shortened, but the anterior tibialis is lengthened because the toes are pointed. The anterior tib is about the same size as able-bodied people who can walk around. So that's the same size as it was before the injury probably. But the other muscles, because they're shortened, are smaller. So someone who has slumped shoulders already probably is someone who would want to even focus more on making sure they get a deep, wide range of motion on their chest movements. And keeping I can't really see here, keeping your hands in this sort of position. So not internally rotated at the shoulder, but like this also can be helpful. That tends to take the anterior delt out. So you can grip some machines in that way. So doing fly movements with that sort of positioning.
That makes sense.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
I even feel like even with like the pec deck, I can tend to press with the bottom portion of my hand, you know?
Imagine if you used a pec deck and you did it like this.
Yeah.
You know, it's going to be all delt. You can even, be even going to the middle head of the delt if you could do those.
Yeah.
Pre-fatiguing can be very helpful. That makes sure that like you do a fly movement before a pressing movement.
That helped me. That was the way I think I changed it because I went back to my off season and I started training with the guy who coached me, and he pre-fatigued every chest workout. And it definitely took away my what I thought like my strength was on the bench after that. But I got used to it, and my chest did change that season. That was like the only change I made was pre-fatiguing. Yeah.
Yep. So the pre-fatigue gives you a good pump too. So it helps with the learning curve of the mind-muscle connection.
That makes sense.
You know where it's supposed to hurt. You know where you're supposed to be feeling it. Yeah. What else?
He also added, he said that makes sense. It's very interesting because he does type all day. He's sitting and typing all day, shortening those muscles. Huh?
Yeah. He could even, a lot of people will use like a foam roller when they're doing fly exercises. Yeah. It'll help keep you in that arched position. Just focusing on maybe, I use I'm going to try to pick it up, but I have a lap desk, and I can pull that thing all the way up to my midsection, so the keyboard's up close, as opposed to being forward like this all the time, reaching forward. So that's one way to do that. Yeah, or just getting up and stretching a little bit during the day can kind of help with that. And then new novel stimuli, things like loaded stretches, or the occlusion stretches that I have as part of fortitude training.
Yeah.
So loaded stretches would be like DC, extreme stretches. So you take a dumbbell, something that is not like at your 1 rep max. So, 60-80% of maybe what you'd lift for a 10 rep set, or about there.
Okay.
And lower that into a position where you can let go. This is dumbbells, or you can just on a fly machine, various ways you can do this, and try to hold that for 60 to 90 seconds.
The longest 90 seconds of your life.
They're fucking awesome. They're just great. I love those. Just be careful. Like, people just get stupid and they try to pick up the 120s.
Yeah.
And that's where people have gotten injured doing silly things with extreme stretches. Or you can do those occlusion stretches, basically the same thing, except you might get into find a power rack and grab, it's basically a doorway stretch, they call it. So you grab the 2 bars of the power rack and lean into it. Or get on the safety bars of the power rack and get into a wide push-up position, and then contract your pecs in that stretch position as hard as you can. And you can change the angle when setting up the stretch to hit where you want to hit on the chest. So, do that. Make sure you're contracting the upper pecs when you're doing that. So you learn and practice and reiterate that mind-muscle connection during that stretch, and that will hopefully, help you better to activate the chest as opposed to the triceps and anterior delt. Or using the serratus anterior and moving the scapulae around the whole shoulder girdle.
That makes sense.
During your pressing and your other chest movements.
All right.
So, and then the thing we mentioned before too, make sure there's more to this too. Sorry.
There's a lot, I'm sure.
Yeah. Well, shift your recovery. So you may have a day of recovery before chest, a day of recovery after chest. So you might have chest on an isolated day, and then how you do your nutrition. So if you're eating at a caloric excess and you're only going to eat so much, and legs are a strong point, you don't need to so leg might be a day you eat, at a barely in excess, if that. You're not worried about legs and growing legs. But when it comes day for chest, you have your cheat meals the night before chest. So you have a pizza or whatever, if that's what you do. And then the day, you have trained chest, then you go have an all you can eat sushi buffet afterwards. So you load your calories to help ready yourself for the workout, if that's especially important for you, that you've loaded up pretty well. Depends on the person. And then foster recovery by loading in as many calories as you can. So you shift. You might have a 5,000 calorie day, or you might have a 5,000 calorie 24-hour period on either side of your chest workout.
Yeah.
Depending on what time of day you train. When the rest of the week, 4,000 calories is your normal caloric intake.
That makes sense.
You're shifting your timing and your nutrient. It's a nutrient timing and training timing scenario. You do all those things, line all those things up, and that can completely transform someone's progress. And then, of course, make sure you get stronger as best you can using the right mind-muscle connection and form. But yeah,
like that. And watch the latest episode of Blood, Sweat, and Gear that we put out with Big Dave Smith, because we talked a lot about training the tissue versus training the movement versus moving weight through space,
totally.
And obviously that was a whole hour conversation in itself that I think definitely applies here, Yeah.
There's so much to that.
All right. I'm going to see if we can get 2 more here, because we have 2 more training questions, and I know they'll both be fun. One of them is from TTK 100. He says, I can train my legs so hard that they get extremely sore, and not even a week is enough to make them painless. He's from Europe. He says, is that going too far? I've been training and competing for almost 26 years. Dude, there's not. I will say, if I can say first, Scott, the one thing I want to say, I just want to say, whether it's good for you or not good for you, there is something so special about training your legs hard and absolutely fucking burying them, whether it's good for you or not. That's all I got to say. There's something really special about that. I don't know whether it's going to help you grow legs or not, but.
And you could be a candidate to win Scott's Lamborghini if you enter your set of the month next month in the Lamborghini contest. Think Big Lamborghini.
You'll learn some things about life if you train legs like that. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. God says hello. You're up. Oh, shit. So, the question is that too much? It all depends on whether you're making progress and you're getting at it what you want. You know, if you've been at it for 26 years and you're like, okay, I've made all the gains I'm going to make. You know, I'm just enjoying the process and I'm loving what I'm doing. You know, I'm kneeling, you know, at the altar of the squat rack.
Yeah.
Every week. I mean, like I've said before, I've been sore, you know, pretty much continuously for 40 years. Like all the time, continuously. I'm always sore to some degree. You know, when I stretch out, I can tell that I've done something.
Yeah.
That really never goes away. You know, unless I've taken a lot of time off, and I've only done that basically twice in the entire time. So it depends on if you're making progress. The thing, you know, you could do is cut the volume down and train twice as often, because obviously it sounds like he's training once a week, and just take. What that tends, the literature generally tends to suggest that allows you to do more volume over a given week's time or a longer period of time if you train more frequently.
Yeah.
So if he's doing 20 sets, you know, and he's staying sore that long, and he's not fully recovering, so you can keep on doing that forever. You can, and I've proven this, you know, over decades. You can keep on being sore and keep on going there and grinding and you know, digging in on the leg training, but and this is why I asked the question, it may not be the best for growth. So the question is, if you're still moving, and you can grow actually when you're sore like that all the time, you can still make progress. So the way of knowing that after 26 years is to start doing something that you haven't been doing. Either cut the volume back so that you aren't sore a week later, and literally just make those the sets that you do death sets, because he wants that, I can tell.
Mm-hmm.
Like, for the reason your comment came to mind right after reading his question,
right?
You know, he likes to train like that. I mean, if there's any doubt about that, we're making an assumption here, but I think it's, you know, it's not a bad one to make. It's a compliment.
And if you're watching this content, it's an easy assumption to make too. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Like,
right. So cut that back. You know, cut the 12 sets or 20 sets or 30 sets. I mean, if it's 40 sets or something like that, then it's like, okay, you know, I know people have done more than that, but that kind of a hint. But if it's, you know, 8 sets, then just try 4. DC training, you know, is hardly anything set-wise. People look at it. In today's, you know, like 4 reps in reserve, 3-2 reps in reserve, people will look at DC training on paper and say, like, well, that's not going to work. Right? It works.
Yeah.
But you have to train like a maniac. You have to really dig in. So I'm sure that TT, I can't remember what his user ID was. TTK, some numbers afterwards. He can probably train like none other. He's been at it for 26 years. He can make himself sore for a week.
And he's like an Eastern Bloc European guy.
Right.
He's not messing around. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. So get after it. Drop your volume in half. And see, like, even like if you need something, switch to DC training. The thing about DC training for someone who's been doing more is that it's, in a way, it's even there's a greater challenge to it, because it's like you've got just like, if you're doing it, let's say legs would be heavy set, a light set, and then a Widowmaker. That's all you got. You don't have any other opportunities. All or nothing, baby. You got to make it happen in those 3 sets. And that's it. And so that is really a pretty powerful challenge. It's calling out. So you could switch to something like that, and that will give you, and see how your soreness does, see if he recovers.
Okay.
But yeah, drop the volume back, or try a more frequent program, or just switch to something that's lower volume. I bet he's going to, if he's staying sore for a week, he's probably doing a higher volume type of program. And he's been doing it for 26 years, and he hasn't got an answer to that question. He probably hasn't switched to a DC style training or HIT Dorian something along those lines,
Yeah.
And that's going to, simply because those are effective programs and it's one he hasn't done, that could foster new growth even after 26 years of training.
Whew. Yeah.
Which would be cool.
This kind of ties in the next question. And you know what? Paige had one that we could try to tackle quick at the end, too. I don't want to leave her out. But Juan had said this on our group. So I feel like this could wrap in. So Juan's in Mexico. He has a clinic where I think they do like a lot of physical therapy, and he uses, he's a HIIT guy. This is a HIIT training guy. I've seen him, you've seen him push some weight too.
Yeah.
He says, "Hi doc, at your knowledge, what is the most efficient protocol to bring legs, to bring back legs when you are next to 50 years old? Regards from Mexico."
Depends on what's limiting the legs, why they're not there. That happens. Obviously, that's the thing that goes first on most bodybuilders. You talk to most of those guys, and they can't squat anymore. They can't do the things they once did.
Yeah.
So the first thing is to remedy the most efficient. Like, that's kind of a tough word. What you want to do is make it happen. The efficiency would be, make it happen as rapidly as possible. But some of this could be time, because if there's some injuries or some pain, let's say it's just knee pain, just the generic knee pain, and let's say you boiled it down to condylation patella, so patellofemoral syndrome. It's pain under the kneecap, where the cartilage there under the kneecap. The kneecap is basically just connecting the quad to the tibia, and it creates some handles a lot of tension there. Helps with the angle of pull, so you get greater torque about your knee. That's what the patella is there for, but it takes a beating. So using a joint protocol of some sort, undenatured type UC2, undenatured type 2 collagen, BPC 157, if one wants to go that route, growth hormone might work for some people. Making sure you're properly hydrated, hydrolyzed collagen, Cosamin DS, is a good glucosamine, various other things people could use, and get the joint pain taken care of, or whatever. That's just one example. It's going to be very specific depending on what the physical limitations are, so the person can do something akin to what they once were doing.
Yeah.
So if squats were what built the legs, and you can't do squats, and you're looking for a way around those, then you want to get back to doing something as close to squats as you possibly can. And to some degree, performance is going to match the muscle mass. So, if you had a great back when you were, deadlifting, 500 for sets of 10, and now you don't do deadlifts, you're trying to do bent over rows with 225, and for you, just heavy slag iron deadlifting built the thickness of your back, but your back's broken down now because it's taken a beating. You may never get back to that.
Yeah.
So same thing holds for legs. You may never really get back to that. So you need to figure out what's limiting you from training in the way that once you got you to where you once were. So the easiest, the most efficient way would be just start doing what you once did when you had the legs, But there's probably a reason why you can't do that. So that could be too, like, just the person is. Got someone knocking on my door.
And the dogs aren't barking? It's a phenomenon.
I know.
It's an odd phenomenon.
Give me just a second, because they're talking, and this better be important. Hold on, I'll be right back.
Better be important if they're interrupting muscle minds right now. Scott's got to take a break. There's somebody at his door. Appreciate you guys tuning in this morning. We're knocking out muscle minds early. Scott's got a lunch date with Nick Wary, competitive eater. Looks like somebody else is coming on the feed right now. We have another question from Paige, so we'll try to tackle that one too. I got a thought on this one as well. What did they want?
They were leaving a package. I have a sign that says please don't knock.
Oh, yeah.
But sometimes people knock, and they said something. It was unintelligible.
Huh.
So I thought they were still there. Anyway.
Yeah.
The most efficient way would be doing what you once did to have what you once had.
Yeah.
Start training the way you once did. But that might mean, if you, it's the kind of the mirror image of someone who's like trying to, like the quintessential example is a guy who's been training for 3 or 4 years and he wants to grow his arms. And in the last year, he's only put on 2 pounds of body weight and he wants to grow his arms now. It's like, you're not going to get like local growth like that, like you did when you're a newbie. You're going to have to gain some weight everywhere to gain some weight on your arms. So if you're, a 50-year-old guy and you had great legs when you were 240 and now you're, 195 and your legs don't look the same, the body weight's going to have to go up to gain the muscle mass overall. And that may not be the smartest thing for someone who's 50, who maybe had really good legs when they were doing things that a younger body would be more able to tolerate, PED wise, for instance, or just training wise or what have you. Yeah. So it kind of really depends on what's keeping the person from doing what they once did.
If I were to, I'll make an assumption that, because we do know that Juan is really into high intensity stuff. Yeah. What about one option could be, if he can't train the way he had in the past, what are some other things you can do? And my thought would be, what about it? Like you've said, Scott, and I learned this from you with our programming, is that you can, to an extent, make up for intensity with volume. So yeah, well, what if you were to try, adding more volume in and see how that worked? And I'll tell you what, man, Scott, I've had a lot of the guys that I've worked with had been doing a push-pull leg split with like super high intensity, super low volume. And, I've been lucky enough to work with some of these guys doing this stuff long term, and that we've made switches to adding more volume back in now, where in maybe doing push-pull legs and then doing a back day and a leg day with higher volume. So push-pull legs, high intensity. And then the 4th and 5th workout would be a back day with more volume and a leg day with more volume. And we're seeing better results by adding that little bit of volume back in. And I know that's what Nate Spears said he did too, because we asked him, we're like, Nate, how did you improve your physique? And he said, well, as much as he loves intensity and is as intense of a guy he can be in the gym, he was like, I still had to ask myself, did I have a little bit more to give than just that high intensity set that I was doing? And so he added more volume in, and he realized there was a little bit left, and he was able to satisfy it with volume.
That approach, I'm not sure how Nate scheduled it throughout the week, but what you described there is something that John Meadows has had in his programs for years now.
Yeah,
that's like a basic way in which many of his programs are constructed. So you'd have, your kind of your core days, the three-way split, and then higher volume days where you're not trying to push the heavy loads, but you're doing, higher rep sets and higher volume on those days.
As I started learning about this, I discovered one of his plans. I think it was Avalanche that works. I think it was Avalanche that works that way. Yeah. Specifically, and then it made me feel like, you know what? If John's doing this, I'm onto something here,
Yeah, he's been doing that for a while, and that's the thing. Like everyone, if you keep doing what you've been doing, you keep getting what you've been getting. So, if Juan's been doing, an HID approach for his legs and they're like regressing, then yeah, he's going to have to do something else. So you pick from one of the other options as far as what we know produces muscle growth. So higher volume. Switch up the frequency, switch the volume, stop doing because he trains really hard. If he's talking about himself, I wasn't sure that this applied to him. I don't know that he's 50.
Yeah, he's up there. I might be wrong, but I thought it was about him. But yeah, for sure, it could be anybody.
Yeah, but you're totally right. There's an optimal place there. So. Yeah, it's hard to know. I want to give a specific sort of answer, but you can't really. So yeah, more volume is definitely a possibility.
Yeah, I just thought I'd throw it out there.
Yeah, this is the thing that's toughest with an older guy, is there is an age factor there. There's just something that's there, and so there's. Eventually we all die. Like the trajectory we're going is to where there's no muscle growth at all, like nothing. Yes. So so you're trying, like, is there anything that can be done to prevent that decline completely? Well, no, pretty much. Um, so recovery resources are one thing that many people, complain about or notice as they get older, is that they just can't recover as well. So this doesn't mean that this wasn't something he should do, because I think he's been doing exactly like you said, lots of HIT. So that's a really solid thought. The thing with Juan too is, like, so he might be like, okay, I'm going to go to 30 sets of workout, like, right off the bat, because I think people who train like he does have an extreme, tendencies in their personality.
Yeah.
So he might go way too far and, like, way overshoot the target. Instead of 30, try just doubling your sets.
Yeah.
And maybe adding 2 days of rest or something like that. So going from a 2-way to a 3-way, or a 3-way to a 4-way split, and adding training every 5 days or every 6 days instead of every 4, or whatever it might be. So extending things out, adding a little more volume, and just trying that, because with the age, you've got limited recovery resources. Whereas with your guys, and this works especially with people who are coming into their prime, they don't know how much they can actually recover from and how much they can do.
Yeah.
And Nate's he's been at it for a long time. Nate's a veteran, but he recognized he had more left recovery wise.
Yeah.
That's why he did that. That's why it worked. So the recovery's got to be there if the progress is going to happen. So you have to be, your thought is dead on, but you got to, the devil's in the dose, as they say.
Yeah. You got to figure out how to apply it for you. Right.
Right. How much is the right amount?
All right. I'll
Paige
grab this one.
I think.
Yes. I'll grab this one real quick here. By the way, I've shouted her out before, but shout out to Paige for having won her pro card this year. And she is definitely in the depths of off season, because she's putting some muscle on. You can see it in her posing, her, like, that she posts on Instagram and stuff. Scott, any way to reduce knee tenderness while also increasing quad days? I've been stretching, foam rolling, proper warm-ups. I use knee sleeves sometimes, but not trying to depend on them. Chiropractor and massage as well every couple weeks. Am I missing anything? Is it a weak body part for me? I feel like mostly with hacks. I feel it mostly with hacks and split squats.
I'm going to guess this is what I just happen to have talked about. It's patellofemoral thing. Women tend to have that more than men.
Really?
Where the pain is under the kneecap. Yeah. And that's going to make it harder. So maybe she can't even do knee extensions. Knee extensions tend to be the worst for that. So she said hacks and split squats. Split squats she can probably keep in, and then change her body orientation so it becomes more of a hamstring, and the length of her where her length of her stride, so to speak, how far her legs are split apart. So where she's coming down, making it more of a glute and hamstring activation issue, because that's what most women want. So it's actually good. She's getting some stuff done, because hopefully quads aren't just weak and everything else is okay. It sounds like she's probably good as far as the glute and hamstring development, which is where most women want to go. So avoid the stuff that causes pain is what I'm getting at. So the split squats she could do if she can avoid pain when doing them. Stretching the quad would be something that could help in 2 ways. One, this is something they'll do for, like, generally patellofemoral syndrome for people, is just make sure there's good flexibility there. Whether you can actually change flexibility, you probably can, especially because we almost never, or you can change flexibility. You're changing the length of the muscle literally, because we almost never get into a true quote unquote hurdler type stretch where your glutes up at your butt, and you're stretching out your quad and the hip extensors. So a stretch like that could help, because it gives if you've got a tight if you have poor mobility of the patella over the knee, then it's not going to be able to go where it needs to go to keep it from keep that irritation from happening. So some people can actually be in a situation where the kneecap just doesn't ride correctly, and having some flexibility there gives the body some degrees of freedom, so to speak, for that thing to go where it's supposed to go, and that can remedy patellofemoral syndrome in a big way. Just as an aside, when people are doing leg presses, those sorts of things, she probably finds this doesn't help with building the quad, but leg presses, especially driving with the heels, will tend to alleviate the pain. So she could still keep the hack squats in and drive more with the heels, but that doesn't mean that doesn't help with the quad activation issue.
Hacks are really popular now, and I feel like hacks do. It depends on the hack squat too, but hacks tend to be one that really hits your knees a lot more,
especially if they have you plantar flexed. So the foot pad, there's some people remember this somehow. In my old gym back in Arizona, we had flex equipment. So we had a hack squat that was a great machine, aside from the fact that the foot plate was not at 90 degree to the plane of movement of the hack squat. It was, it was like 30 degrees off of that. It was a knee destroyer. So it's just a knee wrecker. I went and actually bought a board. I made a wedge actually that we throw in there all the time.
So you put like your toes on it to balance them.
It was a whole wedge of board. So like let's say it was like this. Yeah. The wedge changed the angle to like that.
I gotcha.
So you weren't plantar flex so much. You didn't have so much knee shear. And it wasn't such a quad killer.
Yeah.
Made it a really nice machine. You could drive more evenly, and it actually helped with stability. It felt better. But I couldn't even do those, because I tend to have patellofemoral issues if I'm not careful. I couldn't even do a warm-up set because they hurt so bad. We would just warm up through them and just do them, and my knees would be wrecked for like a week.
Ugh.
And finally I'd come around to them. We were doing DC, I think, at the time, and it'd be like, my knees would just be better by the time we come back around to them. Then I just wrecked my knees for a week.
Oh gosh.
So avoiding exercise hacks like that, and she could actually put sometimes you can get like plates. Someone can help you with this, or like a 2x4 or a small wedge under the toe when doing those hacks. It takes some of the loading off the quad, but that'll allow her to do those if she likes those movements.
Yeah.
Back to the stretches, though. The stretches can help with the patellar alignment, but she could also add in those quad stretches as a way to stimulate quad growth. And we've talked about this just this podcast. So, and those are like that is if there's the one thing that people neglect the most in fortitude training is they just don't do the stretches. I see this when I do the camps. People have been doing it for a while, and they just like, oh, I really never did the stretches. Do they matter? And I'm like, let me show you how to do the stretch. And they're like, holy shit, that was harder than the exercise, especially the quad stretch. So you get in one of those stretches like that and do an occlusion stretch with your heel back up against your butt. And I usually would take like the pad of the round rolly pad that you have on some lat pull down machines, or like a decline bench, something like that. That's about that height, so you can hook would be the top side of your foot when your foot's back up at your butt on that, and then you can really drive your hips forward and stretch the hip flexors, and the rectus femoris is one of your quad muscles, and contract the quad while you're doing that. Get into that like as soon as you safely can after your last quad exercise, and contract as hard as you can for 90 seconds. Most people can't even stay. If you've still got a pump, you can't even stay in there for 30 seconds because the pain's too much. They have to stop. Just too painful. That when Dave Henry and I, when we were doing DC training way back when, the thing we both noticed, and many people have, is that brings out quad separation. And I don't think it's like some crazy spot reducing type of thing. What I think that does, especially that stretch, because that's the one that we always use, it's one I pretty much always use for quads, is it activates the rectus femoris because it's stretched like that, and you can activate it in that way in a lengthened position as well, which is good. And the rectus femoris, when it's highly developed, is largely responsible for that separation that you see between the rectus femoris and the lateralis and the medialis on either side. Because you can imagine if so like mountains in a range, you've got peaks and valleys. If the lateralis and the medialis are on either side, and then you've got a huge bulging rectus femoris running down the middle of your quad, that well-developed muscle means that the groove between the muscles on either side of it, the medialis and lateralis, those are more prominent. Those are more evident. So doing those stretches can give you better separation in your quads, just by making the rectus femoris grow. Which, if she has knee pain, she may not even like want to activate as much. It could be that because that one's lined right up in the middle of the patella.
Yeah.
So it has the best angle of pull for changing patellar alignment. It could be that her activation pattern is such that she doesn't use her rectus femoris very often. I don't know if she's listening. Was that a posted question today?
That was on you posted a thread,
okay.
And it was on that thread. So I don't think she's with us now.
She's okay. But, so yeah, those are the things. And then all those stuff I mentioned about joint stuff would be a way to go.
All right.
Those joint things to get the knees healthy again.
Cool. Let's get out of here. We got a lot of good training talk here covered. I want to mention too, guys, once again, check out byobbcoach.com because you can get Scott's book there. You can also check out his training plan, Fortitude Training. It's like $20 to get the ebook for that. So check it out. Of course, go to our sponsors, truenutrition.com. Check out MPA Muscle Intrusion and check out supplementsource.ca for you guys in Canada. You'll get some really good deals on some high quality supplements. Scott Stevenson, as always, man.
Scott McNally.
It has been a pleasure, my friend.
Likewise. Yes, sir.